This is the BZ-75. It is a Tier 10 Chinese Tech Tree Heavy, a vehicle that I made my initial impressions on earlier today, playing my first two games and getting an idea for its playstyle, gun, and what I thought the vehicle was going to be like. Now that I have played over 30 battles in this vehicle, I think it's time that I share my full review. The BZ-75. Now the first thing I want to clarify, out of the 38 battles I've played in this vehicle, I have not played a single game using the 130mm. Some of you might ask why. On paper the 130 looks pretty good, and it is. It's got decent dispersion at .344, its aiming time is really good, and its DPM is alright, it's got decent penetration, and yeah, it's just a solid gun in general. So why haven't I used the 130mm? Well, it's very simple. If I want to drive a tank with a 130mm, I'm going to make my way over to the European nation, and I'm going to play in the BZ-75. Not only does this tank have basically the same top speed with a better power-to-weight ratio, but it has the same dispersion, same aiming time, with combat stabilization, it has more alpha damage, it's got much better armor, and it's just a better tank if you're going to run a 130. This vehicle is meant to be played with the derp gun, and because of that, I will only be driving it with the derp gun. If you want to grind this line and then use the 130, I just don't get why you would when you have options like the BZ-75 and the IS-7 to your disposal, which are much better options if that's the route you're going to choose. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the line itself, actually fantastic. The BZ-166 is amazing, and the BZ-68 is actually kind of overpowered. I'm going to be real, I'll have a video up on that tomorrow morning. I have not played the BZ-68, but it looks alright, it's got decent DPM, it's just an average Tier 7 heavy, so I can't really say there's going to be anything too special about that vehicle, but the Tier 8, fantastic, feels like a Chinese variant of the 53 TP, and the Tier 9 is just incredible. I would highly recommend just to grind the line to play the Tier 9, it is so impressively good. But we are here to talk about the Tier 10. So let's get into some gameplay. I've got two games saved for us here, one on Port Bay and one on Desert Sands. And these games are going to showcase just what can happen if the tank gets in a good situation. Now, the best way to describe the BZ is kind of like driving a Caliban. Sometimes your shells go where you want them to, and you deal a lot of damage. A lot of damage. 10 penetrations from this tank is 8,000 damage. Yes, you heard that right. 8,000, just 10 shots. But every single shell has to pen. And when you're driving a vehicle that has .38 dispersion, very poor on movement values, and pretty mediocre aiming time at best, you're not going to be hitting the majority of your shots. I would say you're going to be going around 70 to 80% hit rate, and that's not even talking about your pen rate. So we'll see. But let's make our way into the front line here. Now, I am running hit points on this tank, and I would highly recommend to do so, because the armor is pointless on this vehicle. You will get bounces. The hull, the tracks are kind of troll, but the problem is that the vehicle has no turret armor, and if you're trying to use the vehicle based on the turret armor, you're not going to get any bounces. Look at that absolute juicer into the enemy Kampfpanzer 50 ton. 951 damage into his tank. And just like that, the Yo finishes him off. That is insane. I mean, we literally just did the same damage as a 183, and now we shoot the 50B for 700, and that's a low roll. But just in 2 shots, we've been able to deal 1,643 damage. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great example, just alone, what the vehicle can do. Now, we got the 50B, and this tank actually has good reverse. 15 kilometers per hour is quite nice. And right now, I'm just hoping the 50B makes a misplay, and he does, and allows us to take an 850 chunk off him. 3 pens, 2,500 damage. That is insane. Now, you might say, holy crap, this tank is overpowered. It's not, because you don't have any pen, and you have no gold rounds. So, for example, we didn't pen the 183 there. We still rolled him for 320, but It's nothing insane. And I should mention at the same time that you have to wait 17.3 seconds to reload. You do have AP ammo, which deals 620 damage per shot, which is pretty good. But the problem with the AP ammo is that, well, it's still very inaccurate, and you're not even dealing splash damage if you don't pen. So, yeah. And it doesn't have that much pen. It's almost enough to cut through like a VK90 lower plate, but it's not enough. Which means you really, really, really have to know where you're aiming, especially if you're fighting German super heavies, E3, things like that. You really need to know where you're aiming to cut through opponents. So we got the 50B above us, and we're going to aim it on his tank. Easy shot, and goes right into the gun. Great example of the accuracy, though. Not what I would consider fantastic in that regard. So at this point, we are still full health, and I'm trying to see if we can just get out some chunks. So we got the 113, he overpokes, and yes, my RNG gets a little bit better and is able to squeeze in between the track links of the 113, finishing him off for 700. Alright, well, all that's left is the 50B and the E100. Okay, so I don't want to get shot by the E100. I'm going to load AP, but you can see I cannot pen him with my AP ammo anywhere. So instead, I'm going to load a standard HE, get to the side of the 50B, and I'm just going to load, actually, the premium HE. I decided at that moment, I was like, wow, that's a really tricky shot, and I don't trust the gun on this vehicle, so we're just going to load our gold rounds and butter him with some Hesh. Or it's not even Hesh, it's just HE, because it's a Chinese vehicle. Alright, well, let's aim it on the E100. We have the flat side of his turret. That's an awful roll. 585. That's really lame, I'm not gonna lie. But we are up to 5,692 damage, and look at that. We got the rear of a 50 TP. Come to Papa! Boom! Oh, and a fire for 967. Just like that, we ended up with a pretty nutty game. We were able to deal 6,659 damage, which was 3 times higher than the next best on our team. Obviously, we finished off with an ace, and we even blocked a little bit at 1,440. However, I should mention that the armor is not the major strength of this tank, so that's a pretty solid result for the BZ. Now, we make our way to the opposite. This is a defeat on Desert Sands. And, well, you're going to see a lot of bad luck in this game. In fact, terrible luck, to be completely real. But you'll see, I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who didn't watch this on live stream. Now, up against us, we got an AMX 50B, a BZ-75, E100, Le Foch, Hori, IS-7, and a T110E4. Okay, well, I'm going to make my way over towards the heavy route. Now, the thing about the BZ is it's actually better on flat ground than it is hull down. I know that sounds weird, but it's because of the fact that the turret is actually stronger on flat ground. But the lower plate is quite weak. And the Foch, well, he just kind of YOLOs out. It gets away with it. Nobody on the team shoots him. That got me really, really irritated early game. I was so mad that the Foch was just able to push, but not as mad as my toonmate, who just got ammo rack for 2,756 health. Don't we love World of Tanks? Whoa, what a fun game! My friend really had a chance. Well, unfortunate. To be fair, it was a bit of a sussler poke exposing his hull, but it definitely did not deserve an ammo rack for it. We are going to try and farm as much as possible. And again, do you see how tricky it is to try and cut through that E100 with only AP ammo? It's nice that this vehicle has okay AP pen, but I do wish it was a little bit more, maybe 270, 200, maybe 75 mils, just enough that you could penetrate like the lower plate of an E100 confirmed. But, ooh, Foch over pokes, and we get a 770 damage roll into his tank. Well, we're not doing great, but we're not doing bad. We're at 2,100 damage, and if our team can hold these players here, we still have a chance. We can see the E4 just fired, and this is where having good reverse speed is quite nice. We have to aim and aim and aim, and look at that. It goes directly where I fire. 975 roll into the enemy E4. Then we're going to get into an angle, and look at that. We get a tracking bounce, and the E4 is not enjoying life all too much. Just with 2 shots, we brought what was a full health E4 to 314. Think about that. That is insane. You cannot do that in any other tier 10. Maybe a 183, but you're going to get nuked in the process, and that's not going to happen in this vehicle. We get an 805 Juiceroni into the 50B. Just like that, we are up to 5,000 damage. Alrighty, well, our team's not doing great still. We're down 3 vehicles, and they're only down 1. IS-7 makes a really bad poke. We're going to aim it on the side. Yeah, classic inaccurate gun, firing at Soviet side armor. Just black hole. I don't know what else to say. It just disappears. It's so annoying that that happens, too. I really think that Wargaming should change the way the armor works on the IS-7. Alright, Foch is dead. Okay, that's good news. We got the IS-7 still over here, and... ooh, close. We got the 100. We're gonna fire an AP into him. 640 damage. Not too bad. We're up to 5,000 now. As long as our team stays alive, we can win this. We just brought what was a 6 versus 3 into a 4 versus 3. But 263 pokes instead of just staying behind cover and allowing me to cover for him. We got a nice shell into the IS-7, squeeze it in between the spaced armor, and just like that, he is now a one-shot. It's a 2 versus 4, and we're up to 6,000 damage. The problem is they have a healthy Houri, and we all know Houris are not a fun vehicle to fight. I'm going to load a gold shell and 810 slap into the Houri. The problem is the E5 just isn't doing anything. The E5 needed to just kill anyone. Literally, if the E5 had just killed the IS-7, it would have been such an easy win, because then it would have just been me and the E5 holding these guys over here. But, oh well. We did the best we could, and we did 7,200 damage. Again, this tank has potential. It has insane potential to rock opponents' days because of the fact that it hits so hard. And if you're actually penning the Hesh, you have pretty effective DPM. So I do enjoy this tank. I started off thinking that I wasn't going to like the tank, but I actually do like it. Now, that's not to say there are moments when I absolutely hate it. The vehicle has very irritating spurts of the gun not working. It has moments where you just get buttered through the armor, and if you're fighting hull-down tanks, there's almost nothing you can do. But that's the price you have to pay if you want to use a derp gun. Do I think this is a good tank to grind? Yes and no. If you are grinding this line strictly for fun, then yes, it's good. But you're not going to do well. That's the best way to describe it. Look at my win rate. I'm going 64%. I'm averaging fine, 3,450 average damage, and that's with one of the battles being a literal full health ammo rack. So if you actually added out the ammo rack, I'm probably going more like 3,600 in the vehicle. It's just, it doesn't win, because at the end of the day, you have such a high alpha and such an inaccurate gun that you fire one shot and the enemy has 17 seconds to rush you. It's just not a good combination. So it's a fun tank, and it basically plays exactly like I thought it would, and I actually really like it. This is one of my favorite tier 10s because of the playstyle it features. But in terms of winning, in terms of actually carrying potential, this is probably one of the worst tanks in the game for carrying games. You would do way better off in a vehicle like a 113 due to the consistency that it has. But let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.